Okay, here's maybe my favorite part, because this is really right up my alley. The shroud image is a medieval photograph, possibly produced by Leonardo da Vinci. Now, but before I start this, let me first give great credit to Professor Nicholas Allen. Professor Allen took the initiative to create a camera obscura to do an experiment to demonstrate his theory. He hung a statue outside of the camera obscura, and so I give him great credit, because unlike so many of these others who postulate ideas, like Joan Nicol never actually made a scorched image, Nicholas Allen made a photographic image and did it superbly based on the techniques that he used. So I want to start by giving him credit for that. But let's talk first about what the camera obscura is, for those who might not know. Basically, it's a dark room, and in that dark room, you'll see there is a small hole at the opposite end of the room, and there is a statue that's outside that room, out in the sunlight. According to Nicholas Allen, it took 4 days to expose his film, if you will. That film is on a piece of cloth that he had soaked in a silver nitrate, silver salt solution, because silver is light sensitive. That's what we used in photographic film and X-ray film. And so he created an image. The only problem I have with it right off the top of my head is that hanging a body for 4 days in the sunlight, you're not going to get the same result that you get on the shroud, because it may start looking like a body at the beginning of those 4 days, but at the end of those 4 days, not so much. So, but I give him great credit. And Allen claimed that in the case of the shroud, the sheet was coated with a light-sensitive photographic emulsion, primarily made of silver salt, and he used human urine to fix the image. Okay, uric acid can function as a fixer in the photographic process. To his credit, Nicholas Allen used this technique to produce a beautiful photographic image using a camera obscura and a life-size sculpture. This is his photograph, which he gave me permission to use in about 1998, I think. Picknett and Clive Prince, two British authors, not only agreed with Allen, but further suggested that this technique was in fact employed by Leonardo da Vinci to create the shroud. So they took Allen's theory and sort of went beyond that. Now, Nicholas Allen, the one thing he didn't do is he never made a side-by-side comparison of his camera obscura results with the image on the shroud. No reasonable conclusion can be drawn without just such a comparison. For example, Allen's photograph shows a strong directionality of light from above. There's a shadow under the chin, under the cheekbones, under the chest, under the hands. His knee and his feet are overexposed. His left arm is overexposed. So that's what you would get with a long exposure photographic image with a light source coming from above. You would get those shadows. Look at the shroud, however. There's no directionality of light evident on the shroud at all, in no direction of light. Now, the STIRP data proved, and Ray Rogers wouldn't let me use that word very often, I have to admit, but the STIRP data proved that the image on the shroud was darkest as a point where the body and cloth came in direct physical contact, and at the tip of the nose, top of the hands. The image grew more faint as the distance between cloth and body increased. And this result cannot be accomplished or duplicated using any photographic artistic mechanism that requires some form of direct interaction between the cloth and the body. That's the only way you can do this. Now, here's an example. The cloth was lifted away from the torso. I mentioned this earlier, by the hands crossed over the torso. This lifted the cloth away from the torso itself. And if you'll look closely, you'll see that images made by light would not have this property. And you can see a kind of a halo surrounding the hands where there's more faint, the image around the hands is more faint of the torso. And you can see that lighter halo. And here, let me circle it. Within that circle, the background or torso of the body is much more faint than other areas of the torso where the contact was either more direct or closer. And again, you can see that here. Let me see if I can take that out of there. So you can kind of see that dark area around the hands. That's where the torso was further away and created a more faint image, and darker on the light dark reverse negative view. Allen's result also shows a very distinct and sharp edge around the entire image, which one would expect from a properly focused photograph. And he did a good job in that respect. But the shroud image has no distinct edges. The image at the periphery just fades away as the distance between the cloth and the body grew greater. The image grows more faint until it just disappears. There are no hard edges anywhere on the shroud's image. Allen makes no attempt to explain the blood and how it got on the cloth. So give the man credit. He did something that Ray Rogers and Al Adler, who used to yell at me, do an experiment, would be very pleased with. He did an experiment, and he just didn't go all the way to make the comparison that I've made to show that although he did a great job, he did not match the properties of the Shroud of Turin. So what I think, and here I'm going to talk about it, I guess, no light sensitive photographic emulsion or any associated silver salts were found anywhere on the shroud. And we had highly sensitive spectral and chemical analysis. Our pyrolysis mass spec could, I believe, detect 1 part per billion with a B. Allen claims that the silver salts were removed completely when he fixed the image. However, the fixer in the photographic process only removes the unused silver not necessary to create the image. What silver remains on the image is what's responsible for the image. If it were all removed, there would be no image as well. The image would be gone. If the shroud were made photographically, we would have found silver everywhere on that cloth, and even more so in the image areas. Now look, Nicholas said that in at least one of his later attempts, that he actually took the cloth and soaked it in a silver solution, liquid silver solution. Well, that means it would have penetrated via capillarity through the entire cloth. And we'd have found silver everywhere. We didn't find any silver except for one microscopic little bead, tiny little bead of silver that may have come from the reliquary from the 1532 fire. We can't say that for sure, but that's the most plausible answer for that. And I just told you all that, so we can move on. By the way, not one example of a photographic image exists prior to the documented invention of photography in approximately 1826, and that photograph still exists. There it is. That was by Joseph Nicephore Niepce. I believe he was either French or Italian, I'm not sure. But that's the first photographic negative attributed, and of course I got this from Wikipedia, so you can see the link there. And here is the peer-reviewed journaled article, again from Applied Optics, the UV reflectance and fluorescent spectra of the Shroud of Turin. I also had Kevin Moran, may he rest in peace, apply, he had a VP8 image analyzer, and so we asked him to take a Nicholas Allen photo and put it in the VP8 and see what kind of results we got. We did not get the natural release of the human face like we see on the right there. The mouth is sunken, the chin is raised, the hair is raised, the chest is elevated. Compare that to the relatively undistorted nature of the shroud's facial features. That's what makes it significant, that the VP8 revealed the natural relief of a human form. No other photograph to date that we've tested that way does so. The shroud does. And that, to me, as an imaging guy, tells me there had to be some correlation between the body and the cloth when the image formed. It's not a painting, scorch, or a medieval photograph. So, there, and here's the paper on the three-dimensional characteristics again. Now, let's talk about Leonardo da Vinci. He was born on April 15th, 1452. The first documented public exhibition of the Shroud of Turin occurred in 1355, almost 100 years before Leonardo was born. He was a great artist, but he wasn't that good. So, you know, and look, this is a self-portrait. So, and Leonardo was so good at documenting everything, we even know the color of the shoelaces of his assistant. And if he had created something like the Shroud of Turin, he wouldn't have kept it a secret. He was a smart man and knew how to promote himself and did very well for himself, even in his own time. And that is what we know for sure.